This car was Ferrari's 1000th Grand Prix celebration. It should have been historic. It was historic for all the wrong reasons. The SF1000 was basically a prancing horse with a limp. The car had no straight line speed. Zero. It was like towing a caravan through Monaco. Rival drivers joked they could take a nap on the straights and still defend against Ferrari. Why? Because the FIA caught Ferrari playing fast and loose with their 2019 engine. Some creative fuel flow interpretations, let's say. The punishment wasn't public, but suddenly Ferrari's 2020 power unit looked like it had been neutered. Overnight, they went from rocket ship to rental scooter. Charles Leclerc dragged that car to the occasional miracle result, like P4 at Silverstone, basically by sheer willpower. Meanwhile, Sebastian Vettel looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Austria 2020 summed it up. Vettel spun after a clumsy move, radioing in like a man filing divorce papers live on air. Fans hated it because Ferrari are supposed to fight for wins, not battle Haas and Alfa Romeo. The SF1000 became a meme, the tractor in red. Even the special burgundy livery for their 1000th GP couldn't save it. People just laughed harder. The legacy. Ferrari fans don't talk about 2020. It's like Voldemort, the year that must not be named. Williams are legends. 9 constructors' titles, heroes like Mansell, Prost, Hill. Then came 2019. The FW42 didn't just underperform, it embarrassed the team. The car wasn't even ready for pre-season testing. By the time it showed up, it looked unfinished, like someone had forgotten the homework and scribbled answers in the bus ride over. On track, it was worse, slowest in every session, by miles. George Russell and Robert Kubica looked like they were driving in a different category. At some races, they were over a second off the next slowest car. That's not bad, that's catastrophic. Technically, it had aero that didn't work, a chassis that lacked stiffness, and suspension so inconsistent that drivers couldn't predict corner behavior. Russell once described the rear end as snapping like a rubber band. Kubica said driving it felt like playing football on ice. Fans hated it because Williams weren't supposed to be backmarkers. Watching them trail at the back was painful. Every weekend felt like watching your childhood hero get beaten up in the parking lot. The low point? Germany 2019. Russell finished ahead of Kubica, but only because every other driver had either crashed or spun. Kubica technically scored a point. Williams only won that year, but it felt more like charity than achievement. The FW42 is remembered as the car that nearly killed Williams completely, and it's still a meme. Slow, ugly, and tragic. This was supposed to be a dream reunion. McLaren and Honda, back together again. Senna and Prost nostalgia. Glorious history reborn. Instead, the MP430 was a disaster. The partnership gave us one of the slowest and most unreliable cars of the hybrid era. The problem was the Honda power unit. It was tiny, ultra-compact and hopeless. They called it a size 0 design. On paper, it looked genius. In reality, it overheated, under-delivered, and broke down more often than a teenager's first car. Fernando Alonso had some of the most iconic radio messages of his career in this car. In Canada, he screamed, "Embarrassing, really embarrassing." In Japan, Honda's home race, he called the engine a GP2 engine. Over the radio, to the whole world. The car was so slow that McLaren drivers often got lapped by cars they used to fight for wins with. And the reliability. Alonso missed the first race of the season after a mysterious testing crash. Rumors swirled about him being electrocuted by the hybrid system. Not confirmed, but very on-brand for this car. Fans hated it because it was painful to watch legends like Alonso and Button stuck in the midfield, struggling to even score points. Instead of fighting Mercedes, McLaren were scrapping with Sauber and Manor. The legacy? Memes. Endless memes. Honda eventually turned things around with Red Bull, but the MP430 era is remembered as one of F1's most painful reunions. In 2006, Honda were race winners. By 2007, they turned up with the RA107, a car so bad it made Jenson Button look like a rookie and Rubens Barrichello question his life choices. First off, the livery. It didn't even have sponsors. Instead, it had a giant picture of planet Earth as part of a Save the Planet campaign. Noble idea, horrible execution. Fans nicknamed it the Earth car. It looked like a giant sticker book. But the real problem was the aero. The car had zero balance, understeer in, oversteer out. Drivers called it unpredictable and exhausting. Button publicly said it was the worst car he had ever driven. That's not PR friendly, that's desperation. Results? None. Honda didn't score a single podium. They finished 8th in the constructors, behind teams with a fraction of their budget. The fans hated it because Honda should have been contenders. Instead, their eco-warrior car was a backmarker. The irony. The only thing green about it was how often it made fans sick watching it slide off the track. The RA107's legacy is a cautionary tale. Cool slogans don't win races. Aero does. Ferrari in the early 90s were a mess. The F92A was peak disaster. On paper, it looked revolutionary. It had a double floor design to improve airflow. In reality, the airflow got confused and the car had the downforce of a brick. Ivan Capelli joined Ferrari that year, full of hope. He ended up scoring just 3 points before being dropped. Jean Alesi, known for wringing pace out of anything, could barely keep it in the midfield. Fans hated it because Ferrari was supposed to be bouncing back. Instead, the F92A was slow, unreliable and awkward to drive. It looked clumsy compared to the sleek Williams FW14B, which was dominating with active suspension and advanced aerodynamics. The F92A was infamous for constant retirements, engine failures, gearbox issues, you name it. Alesi often qualified well only to retire mid-race. Capelli barely finished races at all. The fans' reaction? Despair. Ferrari went winless. Their biggest achievement was making Nigel Mansell and Williams look even more unbeatable. The F92A remains one of Ferrari's most hated machines, innovative in theory, awful in practice. Now we're getting into comedy. The Life L190 is widely considered the worst F1 car ever. It was slow, painfully slow, powered by a W12 engine that sounded exotic but produced less horsepower than some Formula 2 cars. At a time when McLaren and Ferrari had 650 horsepower, Life's W12 made about 450. It wasn't just the engine. The chassis was old, based on a rejected F3000 design. The car was overweight, unreliable and fragile. It failed to pre-qualify for every single race it entered. Not just miss Q2, not just start at the back, it didn't even make it into qualifying proper. Bruno Giacomelli, the poor soul driving it, was often 10 seconds off the pace. 10 seconds! That's not racing, that's dangerous. Fans hated it, but also loved to laugh at it. The Life L190 became the ultimate meme car. Mechanics had to push it off the track more often than it drove under its own power. Legacy. Pure infamy. Whenever someone complains about a modern backmarker, fans remind them, at least it's not a Life. The Lotus 79 was a legend, introducing ground effect and dominating in 1978. Naturally, Lotus thought, let's double down. Enter the Lotus 80. The idea: full ground effect, no wings. The car itself would generate so much suction, it wouldn't need traditional aero. Bold, brave, stupid. On track, the car bounced like a pogo stick. The ground effect was unstable. The drivers, Mario Andretti and Carlos Reutemann, described it as terrifying. They tested it a handful of times before basically giving up. It raced only a few times and was quickly abandoned. Fans hated it because it felt like a betrayal after the brilliance of the Lotus 79. Chapman's innovation had finally failed, and the Lotus 80 was proof that not every crazy idea works. The legacy. It's remembered as the car that killed Lotus's dominance. A wild experiment gone wrong. This one's controversial. Some fans love it, others hate it, but everyone remembers it. The Brabham fan car looked normal, except for one giant feature, a massive fan at the back. Officially, it was for engine cooling. Unofficially, it sucked the car to the ground, creating insane levels of downforce. Basically, it turned the track into a vacuum cleaner. On paper, the idea was genius. While other teams were exploring skirts and ground effect, Gordon Murray, Brabham's designer, said, why not just bolt a fan to the car and cheat physics? The FIA's rules said movable aerodynamic devices were banned, but if it was for cooling, then technically, it was fine. Loophole unlocked. It raced once, at the 1978 Swedish Grand Prix in Anderstorp. Niki Lauda was behind the wheel. Rival drivers complained instantly, saying the car literally spat gravel and debris at them as the fan hoovered up the track. Imagine being blasted in the face with a leaf blower while trying to drive at 200 miles per hour. Not fun. But the performance, terrifying. Lauda could brake later, corner faster, and exit with rocket traction. He cruised to victory, looking like he was playing F1 on easy mode while everyone else was stuck in a rental cart. He later admitted he wasn't even pushing that hard. The car was that dominant. Rival teams went ballistic. Lotus, Ferrari, McLaren. Everyone demanded the FIA ban it immediately. Even though Brabham swore it was legal, Bernie Ecclestone, who owned Brabham at the time, quietly agreed to withdraw it. Why? Because he was also running FOCA, the Formula One Constructors Association, and didn't want an all-out war with the other teams. Politics killed the fan car before it even got started. Fans hated it because it felt unfair. The car wasn't faster because of driver genius or gradual innovation, it was faster because of a giant industrial fan. To purists, it wasn't racing, it was a gimmick. But some fans secretly loved it, because the fan car was chaos. It was a reminder that F1 isn't just about tradition, it's about mad scientists testing the limits of the rulebook. The legacy? The Brabham BT46B remains the ultimate what if. What if it had been allowed to continue? Would every car now have looked like a rolling Dyson vacuum?